definitely, you can ask people, you could ask them what would happen if you don't fix this, right? But then you come back and say, okay, well, here's what your options are. You can do nothing and just react to whatever happens to you. On the front end, that's probably the least expensive option. However, if you're looking at the long run, you're looking at the solution. If you don't do anything, this is likely what will happen. Um, if you hire us to fix it, our process is simple. You would sign an engagement, uh, pay a retainer, and anybody who's an engaged client, I can get in the calendar of a lawyer right away, very quickly. Um, if you need to speak to a lawyer, we can schedule a lawyer's consult, and that's an amount. So you can just do a lawyer's consult and have some specific legal questions, but that's going to delay things. And chances are you're just going to schedule the engagement anyway. Um, and time is of the essence. Or you could shop around, go talk to 10 different law firms. All of those are your options. Um, you always want to give people more than one option. And with us, you can just hire us for a little bit because we want just a set time, or give us a large retainer and we're working full blown, you're our client and we're going to get a result. Because you're giving them that alternative choice, right? You're not giving them a choice, yes or no. I mean, you're saying you can do nothing, but then you're saying you can do this smaller investment thing, or you can do it the right way, or you can go shop around. But we've pointed out that the longer you take to get started, the worse your result's going to be. That's kind of a theme in legal work usually. So the question at that point is just, do you want our help? And shut up, don't say anything. We haven't really got into the pricing. We haven't got into the step-by-steps. We've just kind of talked about the solution or the problem. So it's everything is results oriented and it's problem focused. So when you're selling like that, it's kind of consultative. It's scripted, but it's scripted in a way that gives you control of the situation. Because when you get there and you can't ask your questions, and it's like, here's the problem. I know what I need to do. I know I've been to court before. I do that, like they know everything, and you're just agreeing to what they're saying. Whatever your offer is, whenever you get to it, they got to think about it because you aren't in control. You didn't sell them, and selling sometimes is hard for extroverts who gravitate toward the profession, because extroverts aren't necessarily the best listener. And if you're not hearing what they're saying, you might be selling the solution that they don't want. And when people don't feel heard, they don't bond with you. They don't have the trust that you can fix their problem. So my script works for introverts because it gives them something to say because they're nervous. But for extroverts, it works because of my dozen or 15 questions, a lot of them are very similar. So you're going to hear the problem in their words, slightly different ways, but over and over and over again. That repetition, even the biggest non-listening extrovert will finally catch it. They'll finally hear it. The chances of them hearing it is so much better. So it's a win-win. There's a lot of psychology in selling, but the main tenets that I know from experience are: you have to be in control, you have to listen, and you have to focus on their problem from in their shoes, not your solution. When you buy sausage, you don't want to go in the sausage factory and watch them turn, a running around oinking, screaming pig into sausage. You just want to buy the sausage. You're not interested in how it's made. Maybe you are, but I would imagine most people aren't. And that's the big difference. You're focusing on, a commercial that's selling sausage might show it grilling on a barbecue, or as part of a dish, or on a sandwich, and it's, steam is coming out of it. It looks like delicious food. They don't put in their commercials, squealing animals and blood everywhere and a meat cleaver. And nobody wants to go in the sausage factory, but a lot of service professionals think you want to hear about their sausage factory. And it's just not true. So I I love doing that. I love going through the process. I love seeing the light bulb go off, in that kind of training for sales. But the the wealthiest people, the most successful people I know, whether they have, service companies or traditional businesses, or they're attorneys or anybody who has successful businesses where they're the entrepreneur, the wealthiest people I know get that. They get what sales is about. Even if they're not actually doing the sales, they've created a culture in their organization around sales. And it's true 10 out of 10 times. It's just always true. You look at big business leaders, they were salespeople. They understood the problem. They listened. They paid attention. They controlled the environment in the sales conversation. When you do those things, you win way more than you lose. And it's sales. You got to be a resilient person, because even a good salesperson is going to hear no more than they hear yes. It's just the name of the game. So if you've got to be able to take that rejection. But once you figure it out, it's not as hard as it is, and you don't have to dread it and fear it and think it's the worst thing ever. Now, for me, marketing requires just too much constant learning and relearning and relearning, and there's always going to be a younger generation that just gets the stuff that's working better than you do. I don't care who you are and what you're doing, unless your jam is marketing itself. That's always something I outsource. I always recommend people outsourcing. Unless it's a marketing company, but if it's a doctor or a lawyer or construction entrepreneur, whatever they're doing, the marketing is step one. It's the most important thing that happens, because you don't have an opportunity to sell if there's no marketing. And people usually have it backwards. They think the service they provide is number one, and then sales and marketing are okay. The most important thing you do as a business owner is marketing. Second is sales. Third is making sure you have enough people and products to supply, heaven forbid, the marketing and sales work. And at the end, the least most important thing is actually doing the work that you started the business to do yourself. Because successful entrepreneurs, if it's a repair shop, if there's a whole bunch of automobile repair shops that they own, if they're busy and successful, chances are they have clean hands. They're not actually doing the work themselves. They know how. They started the business, but they hired people as good as them or better than them to do the work. They focused on making sure there was enough leads, and that happens by either marketing and networking yourself or outsourcing the marketing. The sales, you can sell as the owner, but you could also train someone to sell, because marketing and networking is the highest, most important thing you do as a business owner. And when you're dealing with professionals who own a business, like a law firm, like a doctor's office, like a CPA, they don't necessarily make that connection. They believe that their education, their experience, their success rate, their notoriety, the fact that they've done a really good job and worked really hard their whole life is going to bring in clients. And it can, but not at any sustainable growth rate. You need marketing, but marketing is worthless without good sales. I like to think of it like, you ever go bowling? Bowling's a very American thing, but you've seen it where they bowl the ball down and they knock the pins over, right? They have gutters on the side. If you throw it in the gutter, it doesn't knock any pins over. Well, there's a machine that picks up all the pins in between frames. So like if you knock half of them down, it'll pick up the ones that are still there, clean off the bottom, and then put them back, set them up so you can try to knock them down the second bowl. Well, I think of marketing as that machine that picks up the pins and sets them up for you to knock them down. Sales is the bowling ball. It knocks them down. A lot of people think their problem is marketing. Well, if you're paying a lot of money to set pins up, but you keep throwing the bowling ball in the gutter, more pins aren't gonna, it's just gonna cost you money. You need to figure out how to make the ball knock pins down and not go in the gutter. So your sales is the problem. And too many people think marketing and sales is the same thing. But yeah, I love training on sales because I really feel comfortable in assessing where the problems are.
How do you help introverts to be comfortable with sales?
The same way you help introverts be comfortable with networking. Um, I'm an extrovert. I've always been an extrovert. I have no problem showing up and making new friends at a networking event. Never been an issue. My problem is I can go and meet 50 people, and if I'm not really intentional about what I'm doing, I didn't do any networking. I might have told a hilarious joke, or I might have connected with someone that we had something in common and we talked about that. But when introverts go to networking events, first of all, they're sick to their stomach. They're not interested in doing it. They hate it. They avoid it like the plague. A lot of them fear crowds and having to talk to people they don't know. But for them to go to an event, they're going to the event with a very strategic and tactical, intentional plan. Their plan is to hand out business cards maybe and collect other people's business cards that could be networking partners, right? That's what they're looking to do. They're looking to network. So they're going there with that strategy. They know they don't like to do it. So a lot of times they'll prepare, and they'll prepare by doing things like making a script and practicing it. They have to build up the courage to walk up to someone they don't know, introduce themselves, ask them what they do, ask them about themselves. Um, ask them really relevant questions like, who is your perfect client, or what is your niche, or where do you work, or those types of things are very valuable. And if you're intentional about networking that way, you actually have better results from a networking event than me if I go there telling a bunch of hilariously inappropriate jokes. But I have no problem whatsoever talking to everybody. I have to remind myself to be tactical. I have to remind myself to be intentional. Sometimes I'm like, hey, I just left, but I came back. I didn't get your card. We talked for 45 minutes and you're a perfect referral partner, but I didn't even get your information. That's happened to me before. That doesn't happen to introverts. So it's good to realize what you are, and it's good as a trainer to realize who you're talking to. That's why I'm a big fan of all those like disc profiles and predictable index and those types of things that kind of assess where you are on that whole introvert extrovert spectrum, because it's useful information, because some people will not get anything out of you if you're talking to them in the wrong language. If I'm talking to an introvert and trying to get them to relate on a bunch of extrovert stuff, they're not going to be comfortable. They're not going to get anything out of it. The whole time I'm talking, they're trying to think how they can get away. But if I'm recognizing that they're an introvert, you could say, so there's a lot of people here, not a whole lot of focused networking, don't you think? You can really talk to them on that level. Same thing is true with sales. When you're talking to an introvert, you have to convince them that sales is necessary. It's, and if it's a clinical introvert, right? There's someone that might take medicine to deal with their fear of people. Maybe sales is something you outsource, or you have someone on your team handle sales. Because if you're going to grow sustainably anyway, you're going to be outsourcing sales. It's very rare that the owner stays the salesperson once you reach growth levels beyond what one person can do. And if that's going to be happening anyway, get yourself out of there. It's why my niche is law firms, and I specialize in it. I went to law school. I realized the skill set to be a lawyer is not the skill set to be a salesperson. So when I find a lawyer who's actually pretty good at selling, maybe I'm unfair, but I assume they suck at lawyering. I assume that, and I'm usually right. When I see a lawyer who's a very good lawyer, I assume they stink at selling. It's unfair, but I'm usually right. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that you know, if someone's a really good cook, they might not be a good waiter.
Mhm.
Good waiter might not be a good cook. I grew up in my dad's restaurant business, and there were, if you ever worked in the restaurant or the service industry, there's back of the house people who are excellent at their job, but they're not necessarily customer facing. They can cook 20 perfect steaks in a row in less than an hour, but they can't bite their tongue when the same table sends them back for a refill of their soft drink 3 visits in a row. A good server can do that.
Mhm.
A good cook probably can't. It's different skill sets. And sometimes it's broken. We talked about car dealerships. If you buy a car, your relationship is probably with the salesperson. But if that car starts messing up, chances are very good that the salesperson can't fix it. They might be wearing a suit and a tie. You know, they're dressed up professionally. They don't have dirty fingernails. The guy in the back with the dirty hands and the red rag and the uniform covered in oil, that's the guy you want fixing whatever is wrong, not the salesperson. But we gravitate toward the salesperson because that's where the relationship is. The introverts are kind of the back of the house. The extroverts, like extroverts, good jobs for extroverts are sales, marketing, PR. Good jobs for introverts are, you know, accounting, uh, doctors, lawyers. A lot of doctors and lawyers are introverts because it's very, very hard. You have to be able to focus on, you know, some pretty intense, deep academic topics, and not just, it's not like normal college. You don't have to be good enough. You've got to be exceptional because they only take the top. And it's when you're on that level, everybody seems like they're almost oblivious when you're talking, like because their brain is on a whole different level. It's really, especially when if you've ever dealt with engineers, engineers think a different way than non-engineers. Sometimes they have trouble being in relationships with non-engineers because everything is a process and everything's a system and everything's a flow chart. And interpersonal relationships are not a process. They're not a system. They're not a flow chart. So moving back and forth is difficult. Well, you're connecting with people on a human level when you're selling. You're not connecting people on a numerical level unless it's another academic or engineer or mathematician or, you know, what you are. So the introverts are often dominating the professional space. They need help in sales. They need help in networking. But the good news is you are much more likely to have success in sales and in networking when you're an introvert because you're more likely to plan it out, have an objective, you know, focus on what the goal is, all of those things. That's how you get them. I mean, you've got to be able to communicate with them. It's hard for an introvert to train an introvert on sales. You know, you need to have the person that can find a way to connect them, to bring them out of their shell, to make them comfortable. Once you get there and you've got a line into their brain and they're listening to what you're saying and they're buying it, then if they believe you, they'll do it. And if you trained them right, they'll have success. And success breeds success. You can start out as an introvert, but once you do something 100 times, as far as that activity is concerned, you're not an introvert anymore. You're comfortable, you're confident, you know what you're doing, you've seen success, but you're going to be an introvert at the next similar task. But it's possible. In fact, the success is more drastic with the introverts because they have to be so meticulous and focused and intentional.
Yeah, yeah. So important. Yes, to know who you speak with. Yes, it's this different, totally different approach.
I love it. I love when, I mean, I'm working with law firms, and sales is one of, um, 7, 8, 9 things that are important when you're a business owner. So when I'm talking to a lawyer who's the owner, um, they usually don't have that entrepreneurial chromosome or whatever that entrepreneurs typically have. But they're skilled at such a high level, and their IQs are so high, and they're so functioning at a high level. They think they are much better than they are at things like sales and networking, because they are better at than everyone else at what they do. So there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, I talked to someone who's been selling used cars for 6 months. I can start naming books, and they'll say, "Oh, I read it. I read that one." They understand sales. They understand like the basics. Like they know closes and handling objections, and they know asking for the order. Like they know those basic things. Lawyers have never even thought about it. Now, the salesperson could have dropped out of school at a young age and just figured they would start learning to sell. Maybe they struggled in school because they weren't as smart as a lawyer, but they figured out how to convince people to agree, gain commitment, and sell. Successful salespeople at the top make as much or more than lawyers at the top. And there's no college for sales. There's no training for, I mean, there's training modules, and there's people who were good at sales often realize this, and so they create programs to make you better at sales. We've all participated, we've all seen it, and they're not bad, but they they're filling this void. There's no educational place, there's no college for sales. It's not taught in schools. I mean, this thing, and I'm speaking for the US, it's like people graduate from school, they don't know how to write checks, they don't know how to balance a budget, they don't know about credit and credit scores, they don't understand um, how to sell, they haven't, there's things they don't teach in school that might be way more valuable than, you know, geometry or algebra, or some of the chemistry, some of the things that are not relevant to what they're going to do in their life. And it's it's an opportunity, just like it's an opportunity to grow. You can't grow if you can't convince people of things. That's what sales is. And you can't convince people if you're not listening to what their problem is. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yes, as you said that everyone can learn sales. Yes, so it doesn't matter if the person introvert or extrovert, if he goes through the training, a proper training and practices. And again, as you said, that practice brings the confidence. More you do things and you have structure, you have exact plan what you say, when, how, and also important thing, being willing to listen, really listen, not artificially, just also speak and I will think something else. Yeah, but
Well, it's
really,
a lot easier when you do have empathy and you are interested in what they're saying. You're not faking it. That helps. It's still possible. You can be a sociopath and be a great salesman, I have no doubt. But if you can really connect with people and you can really empathize with the situation, and you believe, it's important, you believe in what you're selling. If you think what you're selling is a scam, then you're not selling. You're ripping people off. And that's fine. A lot of people have made a lot of money ripping people off, but that's not sales. Sales, a good salesperson is a teacher. A good salesperson is a consultant. I look at it like when you do sales, you're not selling to them. You're selling for them. It's something you do for something. If you go to make a purchase, and during that interview or that consult, you learn something that you didn't know before, your understanding improved, and that new understanding made the purchase an obvious decision, the salesperson did their job. they educated you or they informed you of something that you didn't necessarily know prior. But we good salespeople sell for their clients, not to their clients.
Yes, because communication happens not only at the verbal level, communication also happens at subconscious level. Yeah, when people communicate as energies at energy level, when two people pick up the energies. Yeah, so I think that when people are really sincere and come from the place that they want you succeed and they confident that something that they sell, it is something that really you need. Yeah, because they can have the product, but the same product is not fit for everyone. So there can be people who are not ready for our program. Yes, maybe they need somebody else, and we don't have that knowledge, especially what they need. So it is okay to refer them to somebody else who we know that really can help them. Yes, like to be honest and sincere and looking for benefit of the person. Yeah, looking for not just for selling, like, oh, I have to sell, I need to pay bills. Yeah, not from neediness, but from the perspective of how I can help, how this call can help person to change his life, to or achieve his goals, or come from this conversation even better, even if he didn't buy. But what can I give this person that to give that impression of increase, that he has something bigger now after he met me than he was before. I think this.
Absolutely. And this is the reason referrals from friends and family are the best customers. Because when you have a friend, if you make a referral to a friend, you have their best interest at heart. You've connected on that energy level because that's how the relationship is. You're looking out for their best interest. So a good part of, and that bleeds into marketing, but to get referrals means you have to sell the referral partner. And so while the referral partner might be part of your overall marketing plan for your business, and it's got to be, systematized and specific and consistent, but you're selling to them. And the way you sell is, I mean, if I had $1 for every Think and Grow Rich books that have been bought based on my recommendation, I'd have hundreds of dollars. I was not motivated by commission to encourage others to read this particular book.
Hmm.
I don't, I read the book, I got a lot out of it. I read it again, I got even more out of it. I suggested other people read it, they got a lot out of it. I read it in a book club, and the book club dove really deep into it, and we all got a lot out of it. And again, I believed in the book. I get excited. I have enthusiasm. Zig Ziglar said enthusiasm, if you break down the last four letters of enthusiasm, it's I am sold myself. If I'm sold on what I'm selling, the enthusiasm comes through. And when the enthusiasm comes through, people, their comfort level improves because nobody has enough money to buy anything that anybody's selling. That's the price is too high, is what everybody says, regardless of what the price is. But when you connect with them, the price isn't an issue anymore. You either want it or you don't. I mean, I have someone that just thinks it's outrageous to pay me $4 for a dozen eggs. I live on a farm, I have eggs. $4, that's a ripoff. They have a little four-wheel drive mini vehicle that they, in the country, a lot of people have these. They call them side by sides, like a modified golf cart, maybe. But spent over $12,000 on this thing. His vehicle, his truck, can go anywhere this vehicle can go. And that thing cost $80,000. Doesn't, but he wanted that thing to where $10,000 was not a barrier. But $4 for a dozen eggs, when he can go to the store here and buy them for 5, uh, thought it was too much money. I didn't connect on a level to sell the eggs. Well, I sell my eggs to my neighbors because my chickens lay more than I can eat. If somebody doesn't have money, I'll give them the eggs. It's not a business. It's not, it kind of helps me offset the cost of buying food for the chickens, but it's not a business at all. But if someone is telling me they're not worth $4, I'm probably not going to give it to them for free. It's like, you probably need to go to the store and buy those. You know what I mean? But I have other people, like a lady that bakes cakes. She knows that if eggs are never refrigerated, they bake better. And chickens that aren't cramped up in little cages, or that are free to catch bugs and worms and eat and scratch in the field. And I have this giant pasture with fences around it. So they don't even have a chicken coop, much less a cage. And those eggs bake better. And this is a wedding cake baker, and she sells her cakes for probably, the cheap one is $500. She's done elaborate wedding cakes for thousands of dollars. But when she comes to my house to buy eggs, she wants all the eggs that I can give her, and she wants me to give her the next 5, 10 dozen, and she'll prepay. And I could say, oh, they're not $4 anymore, they're $5. It wouldn't change. She wouldn't blink. Doesn't matter. She's connected with what she wants, because my eggs don't get refrigerated. I don't wash them or bleach them. So while they might not be shiny and white, they have the bloom or whatever that the chicken puts on it. As long as you have that, you don't have to refrigerate eggs. But those eggs that have never been refrigerated bake better. I don't know why. I'm not a baker. She explained it to me, and I think my eyes glazed over because I didn't care. But I know that. And I know that to her, it's no deal. She probably, even though she has probably tons of money in the bank, she would never spend $10,000 on a little golf cart when her vehicle can go anywhere the golf cart. We get sold on something, we've connected on an emotional level. Can't logically explain why it makes sense to spend $10,000 on something that's really not necessary, but it doesn't make sense to pay $1 less than you can pay at the store for something not as good, because you're sold on one thing and not the other. If I did my job, I would convince him that the fresh eggs are better as well as cheaper. But I didn't care. I didn't care enough about that person to make that effort. But his life, to me, I know would be better if he had that information, if he understood it the way I understand it. That's sales. When you get them, when you know that the information you have will help them or make their experience better. When you know that, your chances of success are way better, because like you said, you're connecting on an energy level. You're creating a relationship. It's not hard to sell your sister on something, or your brother, or your best friend. They will take your word for it. They're not going to go read a bunch of Google reviews and question you and grill you about it like they would to a salesperson. Salesperson's motives are different. But if your motives are not different, you'll be the best salesperson in the world. I think you're reading that book. I think the Scrolls, that's you, right? Somebody recently said they were reading that, The Greatest Salesman in the World.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that it will be great to record more episodes about sales. Yes, and just what we discussed now, that different types of people, we can help them to identify who they are, introverts or extroverts, and based on that, we can give them the necessary training that will help them to be great salesmen in there.
Or just, all you got to do is improve a little. It doesn't take much. I mean, and just like anything else, when you get a little bit better at something, you're motivated to try to get better than that. It's like if you start dancing or playing golf or playing a guitar, at first it's something you don't know how to do, and it looks like you could never do. And then you get a little bit of knowledge about it. And then all of a sudden you're okay at it. And then you can do it, and others are looking at you like, wow, I can't do that. And then that motivates you. And the next thing you know, you're an expert dancer, or you're an expert guitar player, or you're an expert bowler, or whatever it is. You have success. If you have success in sales, watch it. It's a rabbit hole. You're going to become a salesperson. And I think the world needs to know that's not a bad thing.
Yes, yes, it is just the attitude. It can be very exciting because sales, if you come to give the service, yes, you don't come to sell, it is to serve, yes, to serve that person to their benefit, yes, to their best. And in this process, you learn about the person, yes, you ask the question, so you understand the person, and it is very exciting process. And then you just share what you have. Yes, and again, as you said, that you give different options. So it is just sharing information and let the person decide if he really wants that, if he really has that goal, is it is important for him, if he wants to be committed. Yeah, and this
That
is
might be why they're not having success. They don't believe in it. They don't need it. But once you figure it out and you turn it into a process, it becomes like a game. I mean, I think I get the same rush out of making a sale that people who go hunting or fishing get when they, shoot a bird or they catch a fish. That rush that they succeeded at doing. You can tell when someone is fishing and they've never gone fishing in their life versus someone who goes and fishes every single weekend. The same
yeah,
two people can go fish in the same spot with the same bait, and one catches way more than the other. How is that possible? Well, you
enthusiasm.
do something enough times, you become better at it, and you don't
Yes.
notice it short term. Sales is just like that, and sales can be fun. I mean, when I've worked in sales organization, how do you motivate teams? Successful salespeople start getting competitive. You know, we have where I live, bass fishing is very popular, and they have bass fishing tournaments, and some of these could win tens of thousands of dollars for winning this fishing tournament where you just go in your boat and fish all day and everybody comes back and they weigh the fish and whoever has the most fish wins all the money. And that process is fun. It's like playing a game of soccer or baseball or football. Like you want to win. That's why the salespeople, when you take an aptitude test, the people that are destined for sales are the people who are competitive. So a lot of times when I've worked with large sales organizations, I could ask him, so what was your sport in high school? Why? It's usually former athletes or people who competed in speech and debate tournaments. It's people who have competitive juices, because you've got to be able to tap into motivation to be successful at sales over the long term. And that's why every sales book is basically a motivational speech. You got to get motivated because you just heard no 10 times in a row. And if you can't figure out how to motivate yourself to go talk to the 11th person, that 11th person might be the sale. You've got to be persistent. You can't win if you don't play, and you can't make a shot if you don't take it. But fear of failure is something that has to overcome. And that the only way to overcome it is with experience, I think.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so thank you so much, Paul. We had such a great conversation. I'm happy that we did. Yes, this topic because
You can probably tell my face. I love talking about sales stuff. That's
yeah,
when we're talking about bookkeeping, they probably can look at my face like, oh my God, when is this? What time is it? How much time do I have left? I'm almost done. When we talk about sales, I am bouncing off the walls. I'm excited. My ideas are flowing. That's something I enjoy.
okay, great. So I'm looking forward for more episodes about sales. Let's help people to improve these skills and be successful in what they do.
Absolutely.